Do we need to check?
Well, it's been so long since we've done this. You might need to check. Hi, I'm Kellan.
Hey, Brian. Nice to meet you.
Great to meet you. Somebody commented on our sermon recap a few weeks ago that this podcast is almost like the second coming of Christ. No man knows the day or the hour.
Yes, very biblical.
I think so.
Yeah.
And just like Jesus, we're right on time.
Yeah, that's right.
So here we
the
are.
fullness of time. This is the fullness of time.
The only thing that's full is my stomach. I just had Jimmy John's.
Good for you. I had Subway.
Really?
I did.
They're the inferior.
They are. Jimmy John's is better.
Now.
You know what's really good that hasn't really caught on is Jersey Mike's.
Are you a fan?
Yeah. They cram the meat on. There's a lot of meat.
I know, but I go back and forth because I love Jimmy John's bread.
Mm-hmm.
It's so soft and it's always super fresh.
You know what I tell you I love about Jimmy John's?
How fast?
Fast.
Yeah, freaky fast.
I love it. I walk in, ask for my sandwich. About the time I'm done paying, boom, here it is.
I did not have that experience today.
Uh-oh.
And I was the only one in there.
So it was a freaky slow?
Yeah, I think there's some new ownership at the one in Snellville. So I was less than pleased with the time, but they compensated and they made it a double meat for free.
Isn't it interesting how often we talk about food on this podcast?
Well, we're Baptists.
We've talked about Waffle
else.
House. We've talked about Chick-fil-A. We've talked about Bojangles, Jimmy
Popeyes.
John's, Popeyes.
Still the better chicken sandwich.
Yikes. Sorry, Gene. Yikes.
But Chick-fil-A has better service. I opted for a new Chick-fil-A that I had not been to in Stone Mountain. Had to go to Atlanta last week. Stopped by Chick-fil-A in Stone Mountain. Pleasantly surprised at how warmly I was greeted. It's just a master class in hospitality.
They do better than everyone.
At a church I served, we took our First Impressions team to Chick-fil-A and after hours, and they taught us about hospitality.
We've not done that.
It was
We've done the
awesome.
tour of corporate here.
Oh, that's fun. I've never been there.
It's actually really cool. It's worth it? Yeah. It's a really good time.
They have a coffee shop in there, I heard.
Whole full service restaurant kind of thing. Huge, tons of food.
Have you been to the, it's in Hateville.
The original Dorf House?
Dorf House. There you go. They have like waffles. And
Yeah.
all kinds of burgers.
There's a Dorf House down Pleasant Hill.
Yeah.
I mean, it's modern,
Sure.
but yeah, you can go in. There's all kinds of spaghetti.
Ugh.
There's all kinds of food, but it's like it looks like a Chick-fil-A.
Like chicken spaghetti?
That's a good question. Actually, I think it's regular beef, but on the left is like Chick-fil-A, what you would recognize, and then around over on the right, kind of is like a right angle, is like everything else.
Yeah. We met my mom. My mom was flying out of Atlanta, mom and stepdad. And so we met them, surprised the kids, let them see. So we met at the Dorf House in Hateville.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, yes, we can go. Well, the flight got delayed, all that stuff. The Dorf House side is closed at 8 o'clock.
Oh, how about
You
that?
can still have regular Chick-fil-A, but you can't have the full service
8 p.m.?
at 8 p.m.
Goodness.
I was disappointed.
How about that? Okay.
But the waffles, don't sleep on those Chick-fil-A waffles.
Right, man.
They're crunchy. They're delicious. The burger wasn't bad.
It is our pleasure to serve you.
Yes. Have you seen that skit? Jeremiah's. We had him at a church I was at. He is so funny.
Oh, those skits are funny. I haven't seen anything in a while, though.
His stand-up comedy is so good.
My fear is we're going to lose the audience if we don't talk about the
All right,
service.
we're on it.
Like, we're going to have
We
to.
have limited time today.
They're going to start dropping.
I don't know. I think they like this
Ramble.
part better. It's because we talk about all the things they're thinking about. All right, Mark
What
chapter
matters.
13.
Yeah, man.
We're back in Mark. Last week, Pastor Kike was here.
Kike did a fantastic
Yep,
job.
loved it. Did he tell you what he did?
What do you mean?
He helped us understand the entire Bible.
Oh,
in
yeah.
5 minutes.
It's the chicken.
Yeah, the chicken.
The chicken.
The chicken.
That's the chicken.
We also saw a picture of you preaching in camo, and there was an uproar from the first service as to why you're not doing that.
Wait, they want me to preach in camo?
Oh, yeah.
We can figure something out.
Because he explained what you taught about.
Satan
Yeah.
hunting us.
It's pretty good. So
Actually, I really did. I had a lot of fun on that message. I took it from the passage where Jesus is talking to Peter. Satan has asked to sift you.
Yep.
And that's where I built it. What does it mean to be sifted exactly? And are there other examples, in my mind, are there other examples of the devil sifting? How does he do it? What are the tactics of the devil? How does he come after you? In what way does he tempt you and then lead you to sin? That kind of thing. So I built the whole message around it, and it was a men's conference message. Now, the camo was his idea. He asked me to dress in camo. Problem was, when he first asked me, he wasn't calling it camo. He kept calling it camel. So he kept saying, can you bring your
John
camel?
the Baptist.
Yeah, he's like, can you bring your camel? And I was like, camel?
Nope.
Like in my mind, I'm like, oh, what could he possibly be thinking about? And then eventually I got around to, are you talking about camouflage? She's like, yes. I said, yeah, okay, well, like camel and camo, very different things.
There are some things lost in translation. I got to hang out with him Monday.
I heard, yeah. You had a good time.
While you were on your way back. We had a great time. But there were some things lost in translation.
Yeah. Where he speaks good English.
I don't know if I was supposed to laugh. Or he was, and then finally, because we were sharing a golf cart together, and he was making fun of me.
Yeah.
And I was like, I think, which I'm good-natured about it. I don't care. And he was like, get it? I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
How funny.
I'm so sorry.
He is a great dude.
Yeah. I liked him a lot.
Yeah, he's. We'll have him. I'll have him next year as well. Come back. Had a good time. He said he had a good time with you guys.
Yeah, it was awesome.
It was fun.
It was really cool. Week before that, Pastor Trent preached. We did a podcast recap with him that you can check out. Talked about the importance of prayer, and to that extent, we have designated the next 2 weeks on Wednesday nights at 6:30 to corporate prayer. So we meet all together in the dining room, and I think you're leading it this week. Trent led it last week. So we just do a little worship together, and then we just have a focused prayer time, which we actually do have a team, our first priority prayer group, that meets here every Thursday morning at 10 a.m. To pray. And so if you want to join that, let us know. We'd love to get you plugged in. But for the next 2 Wednesdays, we're going to spend some time in corporate prayer for our church. We have a lot of big things coming up, a lot of decisions, all that kind of stuff. So just praying for the will of God to be made known for us and to us, and that. So I want to invite you to that Wednesdays at 6:30, and we're back in full swing. So all the stuff out of the way, time to recap. Yeah. Mark chapter 13. We're going to sit in this passage for a while.
We'll be in it for a minute, yeah.
Olivet Discourse. So this is, the end of Jesus' life is coming quickly. And so he is, you can sense some urgency in his voice. You can sense some urgency among the disciples is, I think they're trying to connect some dots. And, I think it's easy for us. We know the full story, right? We know what happens 3 days later. We know how the church was started. We know, Revelation. We know what's coming at the end. They had no idea. No idea. No context, no nothing.
Right.
And so all of this is like them getting information in real time and trying to understand, okay, what is he talking about? Like they had no concept to connect to. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So this is, I love Mark chapter 13, 14, 15, like all of the stories in the Gospels, of this time in Jesus' life.
Yeah.
Because he's trying to convey to these guys that have followed him around for 3 years, like, hey, this is coming to an end. This is going to get really rough.
Yeah.
And not only is he talking about the end of his life in this passage that we're, getting to over the next few weeks, he's talking about the end times as well when Jesus returns again. So today we start off in Mark chapter 13, and kind of the big question, you posed in your sermon, we went through, I think verse 4, was what do you turn to when things get difficult? And man, I thought that was just such a great question, because of course we could all say,
oh, Jesus.
God, Jesus. Yeah. But, I've heard this a long time ago. You show me your checkbook, I can show you what's important to you, right? And the same principle applies here. Like when those times of stress come, what do you turn to? And that could tell you, what's most important in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, for me, that was the challenge. And I mentioned this in the message yesterday that, the easy part is to explain, here's what the passage is about, or here's the historical context. It's easy. That's easy. I mean, and honestly, I do mean it's easy. And even if someone were to think, well, yeah, Brian, it's easy for you. It's kind of like being a carpenter, I mean, when you're a good carpenter.
Jesus reference.
Oh, you like that?
Well played.
Like if you're a carpenter, yes, you learn a lot of things, but you're only as good as your tools, right? So when you learn how to use the tools, then you get surprised how better you become. And
you don't have the right tools that can limit you.
Sure, and that's where a lot comes even with teaching the Bible. I mean, so now some of the tools that I have, I went to Bible college, so I learned a lot there. I went to seminary, I learned a lot there. And, I engage the languages basically every Sunday, one way or another. Now, the church may not hear, but I've worked on it, before I've delivered the message. And so there's a lot of tools out there. The hard part is not explaining the passage or teaching the passage. The hard part comes into, where does this apply? How does this
Sure,
matter to me right now? So if you're reading these verses, walking out of the temple, they're commenting on how beautiful the temple is. And he says, well, one won't be on top of the next, here soon. Okay, how does that apply to us? And that's
Did you
where
get Donald Trump vibes from the disciples? Like, it's a huge temple, it's big.
Yeah.
And when you made the
Probably
reference
the best.
to the gold,
Oh yeah.
oh my gosh! Like I sat there, I was like, Donald Trump.
Someone's
would
been
love
watching
this.
the news too much.
Maybe. Donald Trump would love this right now.
Yeah, probably the biggest one
most beautiful.
ever. Yeah.
Gold everywhere.
Yeah.
I loved it.
Only the best. So when I was thinking, how does this relate? I thought, well, for the apostles were probably by that point beginning to have an issue with the leadership of Israel. But there's no reason to think they had an issue with the temple itself, right? So the temple's just a building.
Sure.
Now, at this point, they've watched Pharisees, Sadducees, scribes, Sanhedrin. They've watched all of these people come after Jesus, and they've watched Jesus win every debate, not to mention the miracles that he performed. But I could see where they would be going, okay, you know what? We do have an issue with how the leadership of Israel is twisting God's word for their own benefit. I could see them getting to that point.
Sure.
But why would they not have an issue with the temple? Well, because there's reverence and awe for it, and that verse even shows it, So the question becomes, okay, what are we in reverence or awe over? What do we love? And honestly, for the majority of mainstream Americans, which is what our community is, there's a lot of reverence and awe and respect for our country, America. So that's where I start going, okay, in what way does our country, and the problem becomes too, Kellan, and I mean, to be really honest, and I had to be very careful how I presented this myself yesterday. When you get people who are deeply loyal to something or someone, be careful criticizing that, right? So, I mean, if someone is you mentioned Trump, if someone is extremely loyal to Trump, I don't know that you're going to get anywhere criticizing him.
Sure. Yeah.
Right. And so it's the same thing that happens.
It makes them more mad.
Well, yeah, and they think you're another example of a critic, and it's people like you that, whatever the problem may be. So, when I said, you noticed first at the end when I was doing the application component of the passage, it was like, it seems to me that for many people of Judaism in the days of Christ, the temple was not just the temple was their God.
Oh, sure.
Now, they would not have seen it or agreed it.
And you go back to, Old Testament, where the children of Israel were exiled to Babylon, temple is destroyed, and you had one of my favorite passages is when they're brought back and Zerubbabel's temple was built, and then you had the previous generation weeping.
Literally, Ezra
because
and
they
Nehemiah.
remembered Solomon's temple. They remember the majesty and the grandeur of it, and then Zerubbabel's temple looked like a portable classroom building.
And that was part of the prophet Ezra, as part of the letter, is he's like, okay, you guys are weeping, that's fine. Could you kind of get out of the way so we can get this built, please?
We got some things to do.
Weep over there. We got some project that got to be accomplished. Well, that was kind of my point. Like,
and that was so much a part of their DNA. That's the point I'm making.
Yeah, I mean, everything is to the temple.
Yeah, all their lineage, their generationally, they have admired a place to go.
Yeah, put yourself in their shoes. Yeah. It's 3,000 years ago, or let's just say 2,500 years ago, and you live a 3-week journey from the temple, you and your family of 10. It's time to get to the temple because it's Passover.
Yep.
So you're making your 3-week journey. People are asking you, where are you going? Well, we're going to Jerusalem. Why? We're going to see the Lord. We're going to see God. Very quickly, in the mind of a lot of people, even metaphorically, the temple is God. That's where you go to see God. That's where you go to meet God. That's where you go to worship God. So the temple could quickly, it almost start conversationally, but it could become the temple's God.
When there's some world religions today that still have that same concept, where the physical place is more important than...
Well, Islam is that way with the Mecca.
Yeah.
You think of that for sure. I mean, so basically what I was trying to present yesterday is what, by Jesus bringing up, and he did, I mean, with the one quote, stone upon stone from Haggai 2:15, that particularly would, and I made this connection yesterday, take them back to Shiloh, where their disobedience and rebellion led to the destruction of that place of worship.
Yep.
Then you skip ahead to the time of Jeremiah, where it's the den of robbers. That's 586 BC, where that temple had not only had it been destroyed, Jerusalem destroyed, but they were all carried off into captivity. So, God upped the ante. The first time we destroyed the place. Second time we destroyed it, and you're being taken into captivity. Sure. Now here we are at what would be the third time. The temple's destroyed in AD 70 by the people of Rome.
And the entire nation's displaced.
I mean, now your system is over.
Right.
And consider this. If you're Jewish today, and I've had this conversation with plenty of Jews, there has not been a sacrifice since AD 70. So they're trapped in their sin.
Sure.
Now, you've got Orthodox Jews, you've got liberal Jews, you've got people who are Jewish by birth and they're atheist Jews, unbelieving Jews, plenty of them. When I say that to them, like, what do you think about the fact that your sin has not been covered? Because consider the Old Testament system was not forgiveness as we see it.
Sure.
Right? It was more like a covering for the sin present and past, but not future. So you've had no cover for your sin in almost 2,000 years. Yeah. Because not only has the temple been destroyed and there's been no sacrifice, there's no altar on which to sacrifice. There's no priesthood to do the sacrifice. Because when the temple was destroyed, and I made this point yesterday, it was first burnt down, then destroyed. Okay, well, why did they burn it down? And I didn't go into this. All the records, all the genealogy was kept in the temple. So when the temple fire went out and they're looking at their temple in rubble, they don't now know. Now that generation knew who was who.
Sure.
But you get 100 years later and the marrying that happens, they don't know who the priesthood are anymore. They can't with certainty say who. Now, and okay, so if you know a Jew whose last name is like Leventhal or Leverett or Lev anything, that's from Levite, right? So people go, well, the Lev, last names are the Levites. They don't affirm that because there's been so much intermarriage.
Sure.
So Kohen, that's a word for priest in the Hebrew language. I mean, they have no idea. So they lost the temple. They lost the genealogy. They don't know which tribe is which. So if you go over to Israel today and say, hey, which tribe of Levi are you? Or which tribe? They have no idea.
Yeah.
Are you the Levites? Are you they have no idea. So
why haven't they rebuilt the temple in all these years? I mean, since 1947, Israel's been a state again, a gathered people in a particular geographical area.
Yeah.
Why haven't they rebuilt the temple?
So the actual physical temple itself, yes, it has not been rebuilt, but there's a few reasons. One, they don't own it anymore.
Yeah, it belongs to the Arabs.
It belongs to the Arabs. It belongs to the Muslim mosque that was built on that site. And before people get mad at the Muslims and say, I can't believe they did that, Israel gave that to the Muslims as a sign of good faith. Like, look, this spot is also sacred to you all. That's where they say Muhammad ascended into heaven, and that the last place his foot touched as he ascended. It's the same place where the temple would have been. So as a sign of good faith, they gave it. So if you've seen that beautiful mosque on top of the Temple Mount, and it's called the, what is it? The Dome of the Rock, I think it's called. That's where the temple would have been, should be built. So they've got to figure that out. That ain't happening anytime soon. The other thing is there's a few organizations that exist for the purpose of when we get everything done, we're going to move forward towards rebuilding that temple. Now, they've got to negotiate with the Muslims to get that spot back. But there's one group that is putting together the specific particular type of heifers that were sacrificed. It's like a red heifer. There's another group that is, and you can go tour them. If you go to Jerusalem, there's a museum, and you can tour and see what they're doing. They're putting together all the articles of worship that were within the temple / tabernacle.
It's almost like a rehabilitation, recreation.
They're redoing all of it, And so they've got candelabras. They've got, think of all the elements that were in the tabernacle. You got the table of showbread. You got the ark of incense. You got the brazen laver. There's a lot that goes on.
Which I think is awesome. I'm also very grateful that we don't need that.
Oh, here's another one that people don't consider. Do you remember when they were moved back in the Old Testament? Remember when they were moving the temple, and the one guy reached. I'm sorry, not the temple, the Ark of the Covenant.
Oh, yeah,
and it was going to
guy
fall,
killed.
and the guy touched it, and he was struck dead.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's still a reverence for that. So they're like, well, we can't just build the temple. We can't just go building these items.
Yeah,
we got to get the right people to. So
And they
there's a
don't know
lot
where the
of
Ark is.
and they have no idea where the Ark of the
National
Covenant
Geographic
is.
does.
Ethiopia. I've seen that too. The other thing is, some people refer to the Ark as the box. Some refer to the Ark as what was inside the box, like the Ten Commandments, the staff of Moses. And the other thing is, in Istanbul is an old ancient palace that you can tour now. It's a big museum. I've been there. They claim to have the actual staff of Moses that was taken from the Ark. I've seen it. It's like right there in the case.
You know what else they have in Istanbul? The world-renowned hair transplant clinic
Interesting.
for men.
I've not seen that.
I'm thinking about it.
Make a little trip.
I'll go see Moses' staff and get more hair.
Go see the Hagia Sophia, big, beautiful architectural masterpiece.
So did you do that on an Israel trip or like a Turkey trip?
Greece.
Yeah, Greece. Okay.
Greece and Istanbul. And Turkey. Yeah.
That sounds fascinating.
Now, it's not the staff. Let's go start there. Let's just be clear.
Okay, well.
But they claim it is.
I can believe what I want to believe.
You can believe what you want to believe.
It's 2024.
You have that freedom.
Yeah, so you can't tell me.
That's true. I won't. Knock yourself out.
We'll just wait and see.
What are we talking about?
I don't know. We were talking about the size of the temple. That was
Yeah.
a big thing, I took away from yesterday. Just the magnitude of that place. And no wonder there was so much awe and respect and reverence for it.
Amazing.
Because, it was a modern feat in archaeology.
It's amazing.
Like we see skyscrapers go up and it's no big deal because it happens all the time. I mean, I got in this big conversation with Brandon about whether the pyramids are as old as they say they are now, but separate conversation. But I mean, same concept, right? Like these architectural feats for that time. I mean, most of these people were living in 2-room huts, that were
a tent.
Yeah. So no wonder there was so much reverence for it. No wonder, because from a worldly perspective, wow, that happened, but from a religious perspective, like they put all their faith, their hope, and their trust in a place because they don't have Jesus on the cross yet.
And they weren't welcome behind the curtain to see the presence of God.
And so there was so much mystique surrounding it. There was so much.
The temple becomes God.
Yeah. I mean, it's, there are equivalents of that for us. Like I, have a lot of awe and reverence for
Here's another way to consider
Clemson's football stadium. So
my grandparents on my mom and dad's side, to this day, then they've all four been gone for a long time. To this day, if I were to drive by their house and both their houses still stand, it's still emotional for me.
Sure. Yeah.
I mean, I drive by my grandparents' house.
Because it contains memories.
Yeah, my grandparents' house is a little bit larger than this room. It's like 900 square feet. It was, they were in extreme poverty. My dad grew up in extreme poverty.
Sure.
And so I have so many memories of being in that house. And of course, you didn't know any better when you were a kid.
Yeah,
but
sure.
today, and I've driven Amy and the kids by my grandparents' house where I spent a lot of time growing up. Still emotional. Okay, so now magnify that times an entire nation, and then you have the temple. And
how important the construct of family was to that particular people, right? Like, family was everything to them. We've kind of decentralized that because of just the modern world, but just trying to convey to us like how powerful these things are because it mattered so much, generationally it mattered. And so for Jesus to say it's going to be torn down, this would be a reason why they would bring it up in his, sentencing, Sure. We've heard him say he'll tear this temple down, kill him. It represented everything to them. So for Jesus to say, it's going to be destroyed. It brings a statement you made just kind of to full fruition. Like your location does not equal faithfulness. It is not the same as faithfulness. And that's what Jesus was trying to help us to understand, that, a temple doesn't equal relationship. Just because you're there. A temple doesn't equal, right standing with God. And what you were saying, to kind of as a take home for us is like our location, whether you go to church week in, week out, gone to church your whole life, that does not equal faithfulness to God. That's right. And it's those moments when life crashes all around us. And if it hasn't happened yet, it will. It's not a matter of if, but when, right? So it's, what are we turning to? And man, that got my wheels spinning just in my own life as I kind of reflected on all this. Is like, okay, no, I'm not turning to drugs. I'm not turning to alcohol. I'm not turning to, but do I turn to the news? Like, man, while you were gone, the stock market tanked.
Yeah.
And it just sent everybody into an upheaval.
Yeah.
By the end of the week, it had recovered.
Yeah, we had people on the trip with us that they're retired, and their entire livelihood is in the stock market. And so I saw them in a tizzy, showing each other what's going on, and you could see them it was serious. They were nervous.
Literally. That happened on a Monday.
Yeah.
By Friday, we were within 400 points on the Dow from where it was.
Well, there was one of the guys even said, I literally just lost over 10% of my entire everything I own. 10% of it just dropped overnight. And now again, by the end of the week, they seem to be fine.
Right.
But in that moment, they were pretty nervous.
Yeah, and I think that that's my point, right? It's we put our faith, our hope, and our trust in our 401k, in our money. You brought that up yesterday. Investments, whatever we're talking, and that tends to be, I would say, the broad swath of Americans. We tend to put our faith and our hope and our trust in money. But you said family yesterday, and man, that I was like, golly, like something you think that is a good thing.
That's what it always is.
Doesn't always turn out that way, because we make our family an idol over God, and God, being a jealous God, will always have his rightful place in our life if we claim to follow him.
Yeah, and you make the right point when you say, okay, I thought family is a good thing, and the truth is it is. Money can be a good thing. Sure. Investments can be a good thing. Godly wisdom is never discovered by determining what's good versus what's bad. That's easy.
Sure.
Like a moron, a complete fool who's never stepped foot or opened a Bible can determine good from evil. Godly wisdom is determined when you're trying to figure out what's right from what's good. That's the hard thing.
Okay, so I brought this up to the choir. Something that's been heavy on my heart is just understanding what fear of the Lord is, and how I grew up. It was just very much this scared, petrified fear of the Lord in a negative way.
Yeah.
As I've grown in my relationship with Christ, the fear, is more awe, reverence, respect, exactly what we're talking about here. And, Proverbs kicks off with, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Okay, so what is wisdom? I've always equated wisdom with knowing what to do. That's knowledge. That's knowledge. Wisdom is knowing how to act when you know what to do. And that, I think you're bringing that point home. It's like, okay, godly wisdom is when having to figure out what's right and what's good.
From what's good, yeah. Family's good, but sometimes it's not right to focus on the family in that moment, And I see this most often with when a couple come and meet with me for marriage counseling, which I'm not a good counselor. I'm not a good marriage counselor. I'm not a good counselor in any context. But I'll meet with somebody once, sure. and what
to prove to you that
I'm not good at this. And because I tend to be a little more black and white, and I also tend to be much more direct. And so, honestly, Trent Peacock is a fantastic counselor. He's got a couple degrees in biblical counseling, and I've learned from him even things where I go, man, that was really smart. I should have done that. What you did is a lot better than what I did. But the reason I bring it up is often when I meet with a couple and there's tension. Very often, the husband will focus on work. There's exceptions, right? But but the wife will focus on the kids.
Yep.
And very often, that's where the other one gets angry. So the wife is mad at the husband because he's working all the time, is what she says. The husband gets upset at the wife because all she does is focus on the kids and neglects him. So she feels neglected compared to work. He feels neglected compared to the kids. And so both are finding a place of safety. Both are finding a place where they can just block out the stress of relationship.
It's an immediate gratification, right? Shelby and I are a prime example of that. Early on in our marriage, we were having kids, struggled through miscarriage. My career was, starting to move. I focused on work. There was tension in our marriage. I focused on work. She focused on the kids. And what you're describing was identical to our situation and so many others.
Very common.
And because I saw instant gratification at work. I got told how good of a job I was doing.
That's exactly
right.
Yeah.
She got told she was meeting a need.
Yeah, the kids,
with
Mommy,
the kids,
I love you.
Right. So it was immediate of problem. I've got the solution. Person is happy.
Yeah,
on both sides, but then together we couldn't identify the problem. Therefore, we couldn't identify a solution. Therefore, we were both unhappy.
So, if for the person watching this, they're not digging deeper into work or digging deeper into the relationship, you're digging deeper into something.
Something.
So just figure out what it is. I know for some people I talk to, they just turn on the TV. And this is very common for especially folks who are retired. They sit on the couch and watch their news all day and night. For the younger generation, it's that. And younger now is 50-year-olds. You know, they'll just grab 40-year-olds and they just stare at it.
Yeah.
I mean, when I'm
screen time,
it's fascinating when I'm walking around. If I'm I've been in a lot of airports lately, last few months, and when I see people who are in a daze, zoned out, staring at their phone, playing some, Candy Crush or something. I mean, people will just do anything to block out, honestly, the pressure and pain of reality, and just because it can give me this immediate gratification.
Man, you're spot on with that. And that's where I think, I look at my generation. I mean, this has become an absolute weapon against us because of just the dopamine hit you get from it. And there's all kind of research.
I mean, even while we're sitting here talking, I'm fighting the urge because my phone is just I'm getting texts.
I've looked at it twice, sitting over here because it lit up.
Yeah, I have to put it somewhere where I can't even.
Yeah.
Well,
I did just text my wife back. You're welcome, honey.
And then
I prioritize my wife
clearly during
over
a podcast.
you. You're welcome.
It's impressive. So I did end the message with a quote from Martin Luther.
Yep.
That was big. I thought people would dig that.
Yep.
Especially since I was just in his house and college. And
right. You said that. You started saying the quote. I was like, oh, of course he is.
Yeah.
We all know you were in Germany talking about Martin Luther. We get it. We get it.
It was
Kike,
great.
Oh, man, I have to tell you this. Kike, in the second service last week, he talked about how, we have two different styles of worship and, one's modern, one's blended.
Yeah.
And he was like, in the first service, he had on a sport coat. And he said, is it okay if I take my sport coat off? Yeah, I'm doing a really bad impression. And he kept and he rolled up his sleeves. And I looked over at Freddie Hart, who's on our team. And I said, we get it. You're swole.
Yeah.
I mean, because the dude was ripped. And you can see it through his dress shirt.
We know what you're doing.
So we played golf Monday. And I told him, I was like, Kike, we get it. You're ripped.
Yeah.
You don't have to, because he was just rolling up and it was bulging.
Yeah.
We get it.
That's funny.
We get it.
Yeah.
So we get it. You were in Germany.
We get it.
Okay. Last thing I want to talk about, and we've got to go. The verse 4 of this passage, the disciples are saying to Jesus, tell us when these things will be and what will be the sign of when all these things are going to be fulfilled. We're going to get into this more next week, but I do, this is a very hot button topic given the unrest in the Middle East and, evangelicals. We love to talk about the end times and guess when Jesus is going to come back. I don't know what part we missed about Jesus saying, no man knows the day or the hour, not even the Son, only the Father knows. Yeah. But yet we can sit here and try and predict it. Anyway, It just ticks me off.
Yeah.
Along with your prosperity preachers and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
What I would love in 2 minutes, are we in the end times? Softball question.
That's your whole question? Are we in the
end
times?
I have a twofold question.
The answer is, best answer is we're closer than we've been. But
okay, would you say that we've been in the end times since Jesus said those words?
Yeah.
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 So for people who, let's say they put when they get worried, when they get stressed, when they see all the events of the world happening, they're immediately going to, Jesus is going to come back. Jesus is going to come
Always,
back.
Yeah.
What would you say to that person?
I would say
what has to happen for that to be fulfilled? Same question the disciples asked. I'm asking you.
Yeah, a couple answers. You said 2 minutes or less, and that's where I'm stalling. I mean, first, technically we're in the end times since the baby step of the temple being destroyed in AD 70. And Jesus said that. Basically, this is when he's like, when you see that happen, that doesn't mean sell your property and go move to the desert and wait for the spaceship to come down. What that means is the process, the end has begun.
Yeah.
Right? So the end has begun. So now how long will it take for the end to be? Well, it's kind of like the ninth inning of a baseball game.
You never know.
It could be 6 hours long if the thing keeps going, but it's in the ninth inning.
Yeah, sure.
So the ninth inning could be 3 up and 3 down. You're out in 30 minutes because the other team was already in the lead. But the ninth inning of a baseball game could be, we got to pick up tomorrow because it's still going. So we're in the ninth inning, if you want to look at it like that. Secondly, what should people do? It's exactly what Jesus was saying to them in chapter 13 of Mark. Be faithful, stand strong. It's going to get much, much, much harder than it's going to get easier. It won't be easier until you're dead and in heaven. So everything will become harder spiritually and physically from now on. There's pockets of exceptions. You can still pay for a trip to go all-inclusive, trip to the Greek island if you want, and go to some great resort. You can have a wonderful time for a week.
Go to Istanbul on there.
Or Istanbul. Yeah. And you'll have a good time for a week. But when you come back, life is still hard. So what should people do in preparation? Take their faith extremely seriously. Become more knowledgeable of the Word. Study. Don't be skipping church. Yeah. Skip everything else to make sure you're in church. Because, as we're going to look at in these upcoming Sundays, one of the things that's going to happen is false Christs, false teachers. And the whole purpose is to pull you away, and they do it by teaching bad theology because people don't know the difference.
But it seems real good.
It seems good.
Yeah.
And so the more you know the Bible, the more you know the Word, then the more you're going to be able to spot the false teacher, which is why what happens when I see a false teacher on one of the social media channels and somebody sends me a thing, immediately I can say it's false. Best example, before you came, we had a few families that were attending here and had gone up to some false teacher up in the mountains, Dawsonville area. There was a false teacher, false prophet, charlatan, who was teaching this false baptism healing service.
Oh, yes, I saw the news thing.
I had a few folks who attend here, they don't anymore, come to me.
Like there was oil coming from the Bible.
That was one part of it. And they were convinced that this guy was doing an amazing thing and they wanted me to go. Now, very calmly, compassionately, I sat down with them and tried to share how this is 100% a scam. Mm-hmm. And they thought instead and they said, Brian is ignoring the Holy Spirit. Brian doesn't believe in the Holy Spirit. Yes. So I'm like, no, but let's walk through what he's saying. Let's walk through how. Sure. And I mean, I was very cautiously trying to get people to chill out and to stop. And they never did understand it. So they got so mad at me, they left the church. Not 6 months later.
Yeah, news report.
It was all a scam.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was like verifiably, demonstrably proven.
Yeah, that was wild.
It was a scam.
You told me about that a long time ago, and I Googled it.
You found it? Yeah.
Oh,
it was a total scam.
Yeah.
Now, here's what's interesting. Because of how much I'm constantly focusing and directing people to the Word, it was easy to see.
Sure.
For those who were more into their emotions, they didn't see it because it made them feel good. And good, it must be of God because they feel good. So for people who we're in the ninth inning of earth, right?
Sure.
Focus on the Word, study the Word, and not, false teachers and false prophets. And then focus on your faith because you're going to be tempted to walk away.
I heard a preacher say this one time, and man, it stuck with me, and I love it. For the believer, this is as bad as it's going to get. For the unbeliever, this is as good as it's going to get. Mm-hmm. And so, man, I think taking that to heart and keeping that, as our perspective, like, man, as a believer in Christ, like, this is as bad as it's going to get.
It's going to get a lot better when we're in heaven.
Right. And we cannot even think to compare it to anything.
Yeah.
For the unbeliever, this is as good as it's going to get. It's going to get real bad from here. So it's a good admonishment and encouragement to us to make sure we're focused on
We're late.
We are late. We have a meeting. All right. Love you guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. Don't forget, Wednesday night, 6:30, corporate prayer in the dining room. Come early for supper. It'll be a great time. And then we'll see you next Sunday for part 2 of Mark chapter 13, where we really talk about some fun stuff. We get into what Jesus responds to the disciples with. So anyway, we'll see you then. Y'all have a good one. See ya.